Our headline story: technology's impact on the financial sector. The way and manner in which business is being conducted has changed. The global pandemic has put forward innovative ways that have enhanced cross-border dealings without physical contact. This dependence on technology has projected many previously overlooked business models and even applications. Would things go back to normal? Are African countries ready for the world of AI and blockchain? We'll get into this today. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru-Balogun. Welcome. This is Business Edge. In times of crisis, innovation could be the difference between overcoming the turmoil or being consumed by it. 2020 saw the world brought to her knees with the global coronavirus pandemic that led to most economic and commercial activities grinding to a halt. But economies and societies must fight the virus and find ways to move ahead. This situation has allowed technological concepts such as remote work, mobile banking, online delivery services, teleconferencing, video calls, and much more to gain more ground and even acceptance. All these were brought about with the use of technology. Applications have changed the way we live, communicate, work, and do business. How well has Africa integrated these changes over the past couple of months? And is Africa fully prepared to compete with the rest of the world using technology? Now, joining me on Business Edge is Thaha. He is the Global Chief Strategy Officer for Accubits Technologies. Shamir, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on this show. Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about what's really been going on with economies and businesses. Everyone has been dealt a very unprecedented blow with the pandemic disrupting life as we know it. Certain adaptations, such as remote work, which was already being tested but was not as widely used. Now, the pandemic has sped up the uptake of different options and technologies. For businesses, aside from remote work, what else was a possibility? What else was in the testing phase, if you will, that sort of has now been pushed forward into more acceptance because of the pandemic?
You know, you're absolutely right when you say this. The pandemic has accelerated the adoption of certain technologies. In fact, it's been responsible for global digital transformation, restructuring over 5 million jobs. Disruptive technologies like AI, blockchain, robotics, and even 3D printing are playing a key role today in supporting the COVID-19 response and recovery efforts in emerging markets. Now, McKinsey found that UK SMEs significantly accelerated their adoption of technology, undergoing 3 years worth of adoption in just 3 months of the lockdown period.
Wow.
Besides remote work, technologies such as remote education, process automation, cashless transactions, or digital selling approaches like e-commerce, healthcare, telehealth. I mean, we've seen enormous adoptions happening today. Now, low-income countries have also experimented with new technologies, especially with digital finance services in response to health crisis. Example, I think Rwanda, for instance, temporarily eliminated charges on transfers and payments and tripled the maximum authorized amount of mobile money transfers, resulting in huge growth in peer-to-peer transfers, both value and volume-wise. The government has also deployed robots, I believe, that can deliver food and medications and can screen about 50 to 150 people on temperatures per minute. That's massive. I mean, these are the adoptions that we're looking for.
Yeah. So you said what you're seeing is that there's technology that's moving so fast. It's moving. What you're seeing in 3 months is what it would normally take 3 years to see. But how does that happen? How does this acceleration happen to take place, particularly when the majority of the world was locked down?
So it's I think the mother of necessity is the innovation, right? So today what we're seeing is you don't have a choice. You're at homes and you need to thrive and survive. Economies need to survive and businesses need to move ahead. We're seeing disruptions happen in the traditional finance sector, in healthcare. Businesses need to go online today. I mean, all the traditional businesses that you've seen have had no choice but to move forward. And this is what's happening today. With people working remotely, we've had to look at new ways to actually run our businesses. So I think, it's really the necessity that has actually propelled the need for such adoption.
I know you get this question a lot, but let me ask for people like myself and people out there who have not really taken up as much of the technology and we're not in this industry. But do you think that things will go back to what was normal in early 2020 or possibly, let's even say, late 2019 versus what is now the new normal? Technology, meetings on Zoom, just so many different changes. What's going to be our normal in just a few months from now, or even right now? What do you think is normal?
So I wish I had a glass ball to look into, but based on the data, this new normal is the way forward for most of the changes that have occurred. Now, many have realized that this new normal has a lot of benefits as well. Some large firms have declared that they will only have 25% of their employees working from offices by 2023, signaling a clear shift and benefit from increased employee productivity and reduced operational costs. Now, the COVID-19 virus has mutated and the vaccines will take time to truly protect a large majority of the population. So the current norm has now become more habitual. The people have got accustomed to it. So this probably would be, for most of us, the new normal.
Okay. So let's drill down into this. Your work revolves around artificial intelligence, AI, and blockchain. Now, for AI, which has become a big part of our lives, the history revolves around research and development in mostly tertiary institutions and third-party organizations, and a lot of it financed by the private sector. That was, and in many regards, is still the working model that has helped many countries develop. What option is there for societies, like many on the African continent, to join the AI drive when there tends to be little spending, little research going on? So it feels like Africa is being left behind with what many are calling the fourth industrial revolution.
I truly believe that technologies such as artificial intelligence and blockchain should be used to push the boundaries of humanity and help us evolve. Now, there are many applications where AI can truly help low-income economies, be it in agriculture, climate change, or even manufacturing. Now, public-private partnerships are a key success factor in making this a reality and promoting real adoption. Now, to join the AI drive, as you mentioned, we need to bring in global expertise and knowledge and localize it to meet the needs and demands of the continent. One of Accubits' solutions aims at helping farmers protect their families and livelihood by providing preemptive insurance claims using parametric risk insurance, by analyzing extreme weather conditions. I think that's where we would actually see, it really translate into grassroots level implementations.
Okay. And technology we're hearing is the new crude oil. And crude oil is a massive resource on the African continent. Countries like Nigeria, Angola, they have boomed with crude oil. But then this technology now is not something we're going to take from the earth. It's not a resource we're going to drill. It has to do with our people. Do you think that African nations are taking up the challenge to make adequate use of technology? Is the research and development of AI happening on the continent? Is there anyone getting it right? You've mentioned Rwanda. Who else is getting this right?
I believe African nations have started treading on the right path, albeit a bit slow. However, there isn't enough R&D happening within the region. There has to do probably more to do with the limitations of infrastructure and access to trained talent. Now, this is an untapped potential for Africa. However, there are many examples of new initiatives happening in the space. The Human Rights Watch 2020 reported that the government of Nigeria used digital payments platform to provide cash transfers to around 3.6 million poor households. That is just a testament to what can happen today. But it's still just at the cusp of, transforming. Now, I'm sure there are many more out there that's getting it right. But one that caught my attention was a company called 54Gene, a 2-year-old company specializing in the collection of genetic samples. So I believe they raised, 15 million in Series A equity. This was during the midst of the pandemic in mid-April. So I think we need to kind of promote such innovations happening within the region and look at cross-border collaborations.
And it's interesting you brought up the issue of access and internet, which has been one of the things that we've seen a number of people try to work on. And we know that many things are hinged on access to the internet. And some corporations have tried to make this as cheap as possible. We saw Elon Musk with SpaceX try this. Google also tried with some public access points. And the latest to end their operation was Google Loom. Why do you think this drive for internet for all, access for all, is not working as anticipated? Is there any particular model that could be used to make internet access cheap and available to more people across the continent, which would likely lead to an uptake and in technology use, and then also help spur our own research and development?
Now, to drive down prices, governments should invest in infrastructure or strike partnerships. Now, they can foster fair competition in the telecom sector, and they can lower the taxes on computers and phones that can often be prohibitively high. Now, if they combine these measures with support for public internet access points and digital training for women and rural citizens, they can really start to boast about getting people online. Now, like you said, getting people online is the first step to actually creating that environment for innovation and bringing in adoption. Now, so the good news is that it's possible to get most of these people online just by lowering the cost to around 2% of the average national income. That's a recommendation from the UN Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development. Now, governments can make use of universal service funds to provide access in areas that are underserved, and there should be room for communities and local municipalities as well to also engage in these providing these services that they feel is more appropriate for their localities. So it's all about collaboration, bringing that. So it's not just about the technology. I mean, obviously, Google Loom or SpaceX. These are technologies, but to actually implement it, there are further challenges that we need to overcome.
Okay, and challenges are part of the conversation we'll have. We're going to take a quick break, Shamir. Please hold on. Let's also look at blockchain and the possibilities that it holds for African businesses and economies. We'll also, of course, touch base on the digital conversation, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, as we have this conversation. This is Business Edge. Do stay with us. There'll be more right after this. This is Business Edge, and we're, of course, looking at technology's impact on the financial sector. The Global Chief Strategy Officer of Accubits Technologies is my guest, Shamir Thaha. Now, Shamir, let's look at your work also in blockchain. We've talked a bit about your work in AI, but blockchain is an all-encompassing, I won't say new, but definitely a disruptor to the system that we have, whether it's technology or financial. We see how it's disrupting the financial services sector, but it's also enabling the darling of the moments, which is cryptocurrencies. But looking at blockchain, aside from the crypto aspect of it, what benefits do you think that blockchain holds for African businesses and countries' economies here on the continent? What use should we put blockchain to?
Like you've said, cryptocurrencies are the darling at the moment. Blockchain adoption in Africa will bring about increased competition because of simply the proliferation of all these digital currencies. Now, this competition is what will stimulate the currency market, but also put more power back into the hands of the consumers and everyday citizens. Now, this will push traditional banks to better serve consumers via innovation and more progressive reforms. Naturally, the decentralized nature of fixed supply currencies is incredibly appealing in an inflation-blighted African context due to the issues that navigate the current traditional financial services. Now, blockchain is not a panacea to all Africa's problems. Rather, it's a practical solution to a real-world problem that will resonate with anyone living in an inflation-hit country in the continent of 1.2 billion. Now, the biggest benefit, if you ask me, and the most realistic one, is that of a brighter future of African nations crippled by hyperinflation. Now, for businesses particularly, what this means is they can now actually engage in cross-border trade more transparently and build more trust. So a lot of critical applications when it comes to trade finance, supply chain, traceability, we've seen different aspects of it, even in agriculture, bringing in traceability for platforms like coffee, or commodities as well. So these are real world impacts that can have, especially for nations like Africa.
Okay. We saw China recently announce that it was bringing out its own digital currency. And this is all around this blockchain AI, financial sector and how technology is changing that. We've also seen some big traditional financial institutions like JP Morgan make announcements about how they want to sort of take cryptos on for their private equity, wealthy clients, as it may be. Do you think eventually, or maybe we're there now, do you think that digital currencies can run side by side with the traditional legal tenders? Can we see crypto running side by side with the US dollar? And many have said that China is introducing this to challenge the US dollar in this digital space, to sort of get there before anybody else and take dominance.
I think it's inevitable. China is turning legal tender into computer code and not just moving money electronically. Now, being a government-issued tender would have greater acceptance, unlike other cryptocurrencies that exist outside the traditional global finance system, meaning it would be controlled by the central bank, enabling new tools to monitor its economy and its people. Now, however, this is contrary to the benefits of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin that provide anonymity to the user. Right? To answer your question, government-issued digital currencies can run side by side with traditional legal tenders, and that is the way that China has planned for its digital currency as well. However, I think this is more an interim measure, and it would be phased out and it would be replaced by the digital currency or cryptocurrency over the long term.
Interesting. As an aside, let's talk about cryptos, because it's a large conversation outside of the continent, but also happening here. We've seen a situation where many governments are still trying to understand cryptos and in some ways regulate them. For the continent, for the most part, 21 African countries have actually made no public stance, no public comments, no official comments on what they see as cryptocurrency regulation or how they see cryptos affecting their future per se. Only 2 had shared favorable stances about potential regulation, and Nigeria and South Africa are stepping up regulatory plans. But you did mention anonymity, and that's been a key point of the cryptos. They were meant to stand outside of the traditional financial sector. They were meant to be for people to be anonymous, whatever they're moving. What do you think regulation of cryptos should look like, if you even agree that there should be regulation?
So I think most nations have taken a wait and watch approach as well, trying to see how they can emulate the best success stories from other regulated environments. Now, regulation is good, and I believe regulation is required that can drive further investment and growth in a safe environment. However, it needs to have good governance and policy frameworks as well. Crypto regulations should focus on simplifying the process for entrepreneurs and not be driven by fear or be a non-data driven model or stifle innovation. That's some of the biggest challenges we're seeing in some nations. The best way to move forward, I think, should be a collaborative consensus to figure out what model works best for each nation. However, there are policies already launched that we can actually look at and try to pick on the best features out there.
Okay, so Shamir, before I let you go, your 2016 book looked at the impact of IT in the financial sector during the global economic crisis. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic is a different type of economic crisis altogether. It has hit every sector, and with the lockdowns and restrictions and the impact that is being felt, will be felt for some years to come. What do you think the impact of IT, AI, blockchain, and many more that are related to technology, what do you think these impacts, or rather their impacts, will be on the financial sector post-COVID-19?
Well, it's definitely time for an updated book. But this time around, as you mentioned, the impact is deeper. Now, as we have seen, the investment in IT and more so in emerging tech has accelerated. Pre-COVID, the threat to the traditional finance sector was looming with the genesis of cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance. What the pandemic has done is basically accelerated its adoption and propelled these traditional financial institutions to innovate and thrive. Now, history shows that there has been a cyclical trend to this. So, companies, if you look at just the last financial crisis, there's been, an uptick in certain investments and kind of narrowed or dwindled down over the years because they didn't think it was priority enough. So the investments kind of routed to different other aspects of the business. But if you look at COVID-19, what it has really taught us is that this is not a black swan event. we need to be prepared for such occurrences in the future, not just COVID-19, but future pandemics. So there is still significant work to be done in ensuring that, blockchain technology realizes its full potential, and any other, emerging tech, AI, blockchain, or emerging tech. What businesses would realize is that it's not just 2020 or 2021. These are long-term investments that would reap rewards over the next forthcoming years and so the ROI of investing into these technologies is real, and we need to look at what is the viability of such investments as well as the long-term financial impacts. Getting in earlier on would mean it's a make or break for your business as well, especially for banks. It really sets you apart from your competition. So this is really the time to actually evaluate your IT strategy and roadmap.
Do you think people are getting ready to learn these lessons and to prepare for the future? Because as you said, we've heard it from the WHO, we've heard it from climate scientists, we've heard it from greenhouse people that the world should prepare for future pandemics. So are we taking the lessons from COVID-19?
Well, yes and no. Well, some are still, not cognizant of the fact what the impact of COVID-19 has on economies as well as on the healthcare system. Yeah. One of the things that, we've done as Accubits was to launch a pandemic management system, which is piloting now with Ministry of Health in Cameroon. And really what we've done is to look at the pandemic, not just from a COVID-19 perspective, but also look at future pandemics. And one of the biggest realizations was that it's not just a pharmaceutical-based solution, right? You got to look at it as a non-pharmaceutical intervention tech, because the vaccines are now becoming available, but it's only some time before we can actually measure the efficacy of these vaccines. And it will take time for us to vaccinate the majority of the population. All right. So, yeah.
All right, Shamir, Thaha, thank you so much for joining me on Business Edge. And as you said, a new book is coming, so we'll definitely be touching base with you as we look at what the future holds for the world with technology and finance. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure being on your show.
Have a great day. And we'll be wrapping things up with NC4 to watch, and let's get straight to it. We start in East Africa, where the Kenya Revenue Authority is promoting the use of digital channels in service delivery at the onset of the final phase of the tax return filing season, which closes on June 30th. Now, the tax agency is encouraging taxpayers to download the KRA M-Service app on their phones. The app enables taxpayers to access various services offered by the authority, such as taxpayer registration, filing of returns, and payment of taxes. Nigerian banks are responding to allegations that they are indebted to MTN Nigeria. They are also denying owing other telcos for using telecommunication platforms to provide payment services. The Mombasa port handled 9.54 million tons of cargo in the first 3 months this year, up 10.7% year on year. Now, Kenya's main port facility also recorded an increased volume in container traffic between January and March 2021, registering 389,515 20-foot equivalent units against the 340,812 recorded in a similar period for 2020. And finally, Solar Home Systems social enterprise Baobab Plus has raised €4 million in financing for the expansion of its activities in Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal. The startup is also currently deploying its systems in Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo to support households and micro-entrepreneurs in their energy autonomy and digital access, something that will help financial inclusion. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Head to our website or to our YouTube channel and, of course, check out any of the previous conversations you may have missed. Until next time, I'm Tolulope, Adeleru-Balogun. Do have a great day.